On today's show, the Houston Rockets taking care of business against the Portland Trail Blazers. Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun both going off in the third quarter to take control of this game. Dillon Brooks, has he broken out of his shooting slump? And Tari Eason showcasing a little bit of playmaking and his overall impact since returning from his 13-game absence. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Tell me your favorite. I want to know your favorite dunk from this game, because the Rockets had a lot of really good dunks in this one, or just do a drive-by, say go Rockets. It helps us out a ton. Also subscribe to the daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate that. We got so much to get into on today's show as the Houston Rockets taking care of business against the Portland Trail Blazers, 125-103. The Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun two-man game in full effect in this one. Dominant in that third quarter to take control of and pull away in this game. Dillon Brooks hopefully breaking out of the shooting slump that he's been in over the last 8 or 9 games, and Tari Eason's impact over these last couple games since returning from his 13-game absence, showcasing some playmaking prowess from Tari, a new little wrinkle in his game. Going to get to all of that and so much more. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. And I appreciate all the everydayers for reaching out, checking in, and I apologize for not having a show to recap the insane Kings game. I've been dealing with some medical stuff with these getting injections in my eyes, and I literally could not watch the game live that night. I was in a lot of pain, and so it sucked. But I'm doing better. Well, this eye still looks messed up. It doesn't hurt. This eye was the one that was messed up the other night. So I watched the game late, and then life happened. So I apologize about that. I might talk a little bit about that Kings game later in this episode, because let's be like, the Blazers are the Blazers. They're kind of a whatever opponent, but it's still good that this is a Rockets team that knows how to take care of business against bad teams. Like, that's the good thing about this Rockets team. And look, for a Rockets team that did lose earlier this season to the Blazers, it's nice to come back and kind of get that get back, right? The Blazers are a team that had one of those, or gave one of the Rockets their, like, quote unquote bad losses earlier this season, and this was the final game on a pretty difficult road trip, and you're coming off of an emotional, hard-fought loss against the Sacramento Kings, where you went like down to the wire and had a lot of emotional investment in that game. And the Rockets could have come out really flat in this game. They could have gotten out hustled. They could have gotten out worked. They could have walked into the Blazers building and then, just rolled over or not put up the requisite effort and fight to really win this game. And they didn't do that. They took care of business. Things were ugly early on. It was not a great first half of basketball for the Rockets, all things considered. Rockets had a really strong start to the game, and then they had a really good close to the first half, but all that stuff in the middle, there was a lot of, like, the Blazers were like out hustling and out rebounding the Rockets, and they were knocking down some threes, and Toumani Camara was playing out of his freaking mind in this game. Just high energy, high octane player. Very, again, like, kind of like a distant cousin to one of Amen Thompson or Tari Eason, just the way that he was impacting this game for the Blazers. But the Rockets kind of found themselves in that third quarter, thanks to their star duo of Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. Jalen Green had been great in the first half. He had 14 points on 6 of 8 shooting, but then he really took off in that third quarter, added another 12 points in that frame. And then Alperen Sengun as well. The other part of 20, they combined for 26 of the Rockets' 36 points in that third quarter. So Alperen Sengun with 14 of his 23 in that frame, if my math is correct. I hope it is. And those two were they were doing what we expect them to do as the star duo of this team. They were playing well off of one another. They were initiating offense. They were scoring pretty much at will against the Blazers defense. And that's the beauty of it. When you really have those two guys clicking on all cylinders, it makes life so much easier for everybody else up and down the roster. And this is what this Rockets team should look like more or less on a nightly basis, is you've got your big guns in Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green handling their workload, handling their responsibilities, both going for 20 plus on decent efficiency. Jalen Green, 26 points, 10 of 17 shooting, 4 of 6 from downtown. And then Alperen Sengun, 23 points, 10 of 19 shooting to go along with 15 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, and a block shot. Both of those guys holding up their end of the bargain as the team's best players, right? And then you have the other guys slotting into their roles respectively, right? The biggest one being Fred VanVleet, who has to shoulder Fred has been able to, over these last few weeks or so, has been able to slide back into the role that I think the Rockets really did envision for him, especially coming into this year, which is that of like the third or even fourth option at times offensively, just the table setter, right? The guy who's just going to calm things down, get guys in the right spots, make sure the team gets into good offensive sets, plays good defense, right? And that's it. There's less offensive expectation placed on the shoulders of Fred VanVleet when Jalen Green is able to play this way. And when you've got Jalen playing the way that he's been playing in the month of January, where he's one of the NBA's top 3 scorers right there alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Anthony Edwards, and then you pair him with Alperen Sengun, and those two guys are able to play off of one another, then you see the results, and the proof is right there in the pudding. And that's why it was so frustrating earlier this season when Jalen would have the inconsistent games and Fred would have to kind of step up and try to take over and doing way too much offensively, because it felt like the Rockets needed somebody. The Rockets need a lead guard on a nightly basis to be able to get that 20 to 25 points a night to lift this team up offensively. And it's been a revelation. It's been incredible that Jalen Green has been able to do that. And it's also really nice to see Jalen able to do that in a game without Amin Thompson. There was no Amin Thompson in this game, and yet Jalen Green was still able to play the way that he has been playing. A big part of it, Ime Udoka said after the game, has been confidence. A big part of it has been confidence and just better reads and better execution for Jalen Green compared to earlier this season, especially when teams are blitzing him, when they're making him make decisions with the basketball. He's been incredible. He's been great about getting that to that little pocket pass, getting the ball to the middle of the floor for Alperen Sengun, or just reading how the defense is deciding to guard him. If they're dropping low, if they're going under on screens, he's elevating and he's knocking down shots with confidence. He's pulling up from 3 in transition with confidence. He had the ridiculous, hezzy, kind of leaning, falling back 3 to end the first quarter for the Rockets, kind of ending that on a positive note for the Rockets. And just, aside from, a handful of, 2 or 3 kind of sloppy turnovers from Jalen in this game, overall, a pretty flawless performance, right? And that's what he's been for pretty much the entire month of January. He's been playing out of his mind. And on the other side for Alperen Sengun, there are still some moments in this game where he had some, literally first 2 or 3 shot attempts of the game was him just playing like patty cakes with the backboard, trying to get a shot up and in and just padding his rebounding stats. But over the course of the game, using his size, using his physicality, getting in and around the rim, and also making good passes, right? Little dump offs, little handoffs as guys were cutting into the paint, kick out passes here and there. A strong line for him with 23, 15, and 6. And this was a game where the Rockets star duo just took care of business. Simple as that. Coming up, I want to talk about Dillon Brooks possibly breaking out of his shooting slump with a 22-point performance in this one, as well as Tari Eason, his impact since returning from injury and showing a little bit of playmaking chops in this game. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, Dillon Brooks in this game, playing like the Dillon Brooks that we saw for the first few months of the basketball season. And even then, maybe a little bit below that level of kind of expectation or overall production. He finished the night 22 points, 9 of 18 shooting, 2 of 6 from downtown, 2 of 3 at the charity stripe to go along with 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and a block. No turnovers in his 37 minutes of run. And look, for a guy who has been absolutely struggling to put the ball in the basket over these last probably like 8 or 9 or 10 games or so, this was a really welcome sight to see from Dillon Brooks, right? Really confident, getting to his spots whenever the Blazers put one of their weaker or smaller defenders on him, when it was, when they were trying to hide or, putting Anthony Simons on him or whatever, just letting him post up and get to work down low. I really do love that the Rockets, at times their equal opportunity offense can be like insanely frustrating. And as a quick aside here, there's absolutely zero reason why Jalen Green, with as well as he's been playing as of late, there's zero reason for him to have attempted his first shot literally like 5 minutes into this game. Like, I know the Rockets got off to a good start offensively, but it feels kind of ridiculous that the guy who has been averaging 30 a game for the month of January didn't get his first shot attempt until 5 minutes into this game. That being said, sometimes the equal opportunity offense really works, especially when you're hunting mismatches, when you're utilizing Dillon Brooks post-ups on weaker, smaller guard defenders that are trying to be hidden on the 3-and-D wing of the opposing team. And I love that Ime doesn't let teams get away with that, right? So posting up Dillon Brooks on the smaller defenders of the Blazers, letting him get to his little sweet spots down low, that turnaround fadeaway, which I swear sometimes DB looks like a reincarnation of Kobe Bryant himself when he hits those turnaround fadeaways, hand in his face, getting shoved in the back, whatever, with just the utmost confidence. And seeing him connect on so many of those looks, shooting the ball with confidence from deep, playing the way that he played in this game, and playing under a little bit more control. I think the thing too is over the last 8 or 9 games or so, there have been some really questionable Dillon Brooks moments, like some of the decision making at the end of the Kings game last outing, right? There were some moments from Dillon Brooks throughout that game. It was like a mixed bag where, yeah, he was scoring the ball at times, but there were also some really questionable decisions on the defensive side and some turnover. And it's just, you take the good with the bad with Dillon, and for the most part, throughout about a year and a half of his Rockets tenure, the good has substantially outweighed the bad, or the quote unquote Memphis version of Dillon Brooks that Rockets fans were kind of worried would be coming to Houston. But there is a tendency at times, I think, for DB to sometimes revert to some of those tendencies that he had previously, some of the ill-advised shot attempts, that kind of thing. But for the most part, when he plays like he played in a game, in this kind of a game where the Rockets, with Noah Thompson, who was sitting out with calf tightness, and with Fred VanVleet, who was, playing his first game back after sitting out last game against the Kings due to personal reasons, DB just kind of stepped up, right? He stepped up and he was able to fill that tertiary scoring role within the Rockets offense. Even really at times he was like the Rockets, at one point he was their leading scorer when he had just completely had it going to start the game before Jalen and Alp had a chance to kind of both heat up. But the Rockets need, on a nightly basis, they need one more person to be able to step up, right? If Alp's giving you his 20, 10, and 5, and Jalen's giving you, 20 or 25 on good efficiency, then they still need one more guy to step up on a nightly basis to knock down some shots, to give them about 15 to 20 some odd points on decent efficiency. And that's what Dillon Brooks was in this game. And credit again to the coaching staff for making sure to get him involved, for him himself being aggressive, attacking the Blazers defense, getting some shots, in his little sweet spots in the mid-range, as well as finishing around the rim a little bit. Just an overall strong game from Dillon Brooks, and hopefully this is the game that kind of helps break him out of that shooting slump that he's been in kind of since the start of the new year, because when Dillon Brooks is playing his best basketball, this Rockets team is really, really hard to beat. Let's talk a little bit about Tari Eason in this one. 18 points, 6 of 10 shooting. Didn't attempt a single three-pointer, but he also had 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. He had a couple of the most Tari Eason-esque possessions in this game. Literally 3 or 4 possessions in a row late in this one where he posted, I want to say 9 of his 18, 10 of his 18 in the fourth quarter as this game was kind of winding down, and Ime didn't want to have to put the starters back in, so a lot of the offense was going through Tari Eason for a stretch there in the fourth quarter, and he just kept driving the ball in, and at one point he didn't even care if he was finishing around the rim. He was just kind of flipping the ball up towards the rim to make sure that he got the ball off his fingertips, and then he would crash the offensive glass and get back in there and get the rebound and put it back up. Just some ridiculous Tari Eason moments in this game, but my favorite moments from him in this one in particular, he had a pair of back-to-back dimes. I believe it was in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken, where he got out in transition, and the first dime was to Cam Whitmore. Tari was running the break, Cam was filling the wings, and then Tari got the ball to Cam for this absolutely filthy transition slam dunk. That was probably my favorite dunk of the game. And then, literally the very next possession, Rockets get another stop. They go out and run, and then Tari does the same thing. He drives the ball all the way in, and then he's able to get a little dish to Alperen Sengun, who's able to go up and slam the ball home. And that has been one of the biggest drawbacks to Tari Eason in his game throughout his career, has been when he drives, when he's pushing the pace in transition, when he gets a rebound and he wants to run, and he's the one, pounding the rock. Sometimes he has these shaders on, and he's got that tunnel vision where he can literally only see the rim. And sometimes it works, and he's big and he's strong and he's fast and he's able to power up through contact or draw a foul and get to the free throw line. And so sometimes it does work, but there are other times when there's a better option there, right? When you have a teammate filling the wing, when you have somebody that you can dish the ball to or kick out for an open three-pointer, and seeing these little glimpses of Tari expanding his game, becoming a little bit of a better playmaker, right? Realizing, hey, if I do this, if I push the ball in and then I can create this opportunity for my teammate, those are big growth moments, right? I'm not sitting here saying, oh, Tari Eason's going to become a primary facilitator or a playmaker or anything, but it's just great when you see young players making those good reads, especially when it's something that they've struggled with in the past. And so I thought those moments really stood out to me for Tari. And just overall, it's so great to have him back in the Rockets lineup. He's such an impactful presence. He was impactful in that game against the Kings. He was out there in the closing lineup that night with Jeff Green getting the starting nod in place of Fred VanVleet, who again was missing due to personal reasons, and then Tari Eason playing a big role in this game as well, again with no Amin Thompson in the Rockets starting lineup. Now Ime Udoka did opt to go with Jae'Sean Tate as the starter in this game. Tate with 17 minutes, rough night for Jae'Sean Tate at the office. 17 minutes, missed all 4 of his shots, only a few rebounds. Just Tate's energy, I feel like, is much better used as an energy guy coming off the bench to kind of change the flow and impact of a game rather than in the starting lineup. But I understand why maybe they didn't want to just throw Tari Eason to the Wolves and throw him back out in the starting lineup so soon after coming back from his 13-game absence. But he played a huge role off the Rockets bench in this one, 24 minutes for him. Only player with more bench minutes was Cam Whitmore with 27, and a big part of that was Cam being out there for garbage time as well. But really impressed with what we saw out of Tari Eason in this game. Coming up, I want to share final thoughts from this game, as well as maybe get to a couple thoughts from the Rockets-Kings game that I didn't get a chance to talk about the other day. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Skims. Look, when I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was genuinely intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give them a try. And let me tell you, it absolutely lives up to the hype. When it comes to boxers, right, there's been, I've had this desire to find the right style for me, right? One that fits well, that looks good, that is comfortable, and that is stylish, like all these different categories. And let me tell you, Skims checks every single one of those boxes. I got myself these stretch 5-inch boxer briefs, and I'm totally hooked. These are the only things that I'm wearing anymore. They're the perfect boxers for my lifestyle. They move with me. They never really lose their shape. That's the worst thing about buying boxers or boxer briefs. I'm a briefs guy. Is, over time they flare out, they get baggy, they're not comfortable anymore. And this, at least to this point, hasn't happened with my Skims. So whether I'm working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear that I've ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing. It's almost like you're not really wearing anything at all. So shop Skims Men's at skims.com/lockedonnba and Skims stores everywhere. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going throughout the NFL postseason. FanDuel apps is so easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. But hey, maybe you're not a football guy, right? I like basketball. I'm a basketball guy. NBA season is going strong. We're actually, for the Rockets, we are exactly halfway through the NBA season, 41 games completed, but go take a look at some different Rockets odds, right? Go bet on the next Rockets game. Just head on over to FanDuel.com to check it out and join today and get started with, again, $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season or NBA season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. One more thing that I wanted to highlight from this game was Cam Whitmore and his continued impact on the glass. My goodness, Cam Whitmore absolutely getting after it on the glass in this game. Look, the Blazers in the first half were beating up the Rockets on the offensive glass, frankly. They were getting after it. They were generating second chance points. And I'm sure that the message from Ime Udoka at halftime was, this is some BS. Y'all need to go out there and get some defensive rebounds and close out these possessions strong. And there were some really man-sized rebounds from Cam Whitmore where he just skied into the air using that top-tier athleticism to make sure that he secured rebounds and closed out possessions strong. He had 12 points on only 4 of 14 shooting, so kind of a rough night shooting the basketball for Cam. But he had the 10 rebounds to go along with it, so a strong double-double for him. And probably one of my favorite plays of the entire game was actually a possession where Aaron Holiday got the steal off the Blazers inbounds and dished it back to Dillon Brooks, who came crashing in through the lane, and DB missed the layup at the rim, but then Cam Whitmore comes soaring in. I'm talking, the dude is flying through the air, skies up for this rebound, snatches it out of the air, and then flips it out to the corner for Aaron Holiday, who drills a three-pointer, and I believe at that point it was 103-80. The Rockets went on that capped off a huge run, right? And the momentum was all Houston. That was literally them taking control of the game. That was the exclamation point, the 3 exclamation points to close out this game. Be like, Blazers, night, you're done. Go to bed. Just everybody leave the arena, whatever. And it's moments like that are going to continue to earn Cam Whitmore minutes. It's moments like that where Ime's not going to care about the 4 of 14 shooting. He's not going to care about that because he knows that Cam can score the ball. He knows that Cam is even doing a much better job not being such a black hole on offense, right? He's taking much better shots within the flow of the offense. Sometimes shots just aren't going to fall, though. But when you're defending, when you're rebounding, when you're making plays, when you're making the right reads, when you're generating extra opportunities for your team, and when you're not doing stuff like getting that rebound and then immediately trying to go back up with it to score your own or get fouled and go to the free throw line, instead recognizing, hey, I've got Aaron Holiday out there on the wing, pass it back out, boom, knock down three. Good stuff, right? That's the kind of stuff that coaches love, and that's the kind of stuff that's going to keep Cam Whitmore in the Rockets rotation moving forward. Also, shout out to Steven Adams, who there was a play near the end where Cam had a breakaway slam and got fouled by was it Reith on the Blazers, their backup center. And it was kind of a dangerous looking play. Like Reith like shoved Cam from behind and he went crashing into the floor. And then Steve-O was like standing at the free throw line and he was having some words with Reith. And I tell you what, even if I was Reith, even if I was a legit, 6'11", 7 feet tall, whatever, I still would be terrified of Steven Adams if he was coming at me upset with one of my actions on the basketball floor. And again, let's face it, like it was an unsafe play. Thankfully, no issues with Cam. He didn't get hurt or anything. But it's just one of those moments where you appreciate Steven Adams being the enforcer for this Rockets team, because frankly, nobody in the entirety of the NBA wants to mess with Steven Adams or have him in your face telling you that you did something that was, shout out to Steve Kerr, against the code, if you will. All right, want to talk a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about the Rockets Kings game that I didn't get to recap due to my eyeball stuff the other night. And first off, let me just say, because I'm not going to have time to share every single thought that I have from this game, but let me just say, what a hell of a game by the Rockets. Like, I know they lost, but holy crap. First off, just as a basketball fan, easily one of the best games of the season. Like, even though it ended in a Rockets loss, that was such an exciting game for the Rockets to have trailed by 16, right? As many as they did, playing on the second night of a back-to-back without their starting point guard and Fred VanVleet, the guy who kind of calms things down and keeps them steady over the course of the game and gets things settled down late in the game when they need, high quality offense being run, all that stuff. Like, it was a really valiant effort. And I understand that this Rockets team, they're second in the West halfway through the season through 41 games. They have probably graduated and moved on from quote unquote moral victories. But at the same time, how can you not love the effort and the fight that they showcased in that game? All the insanely tough shots that Jalen Green was knocking down, Alperen Sengun's insane defense down the stretch of that game, the block shot on De'Aaron Fox, like just everything that was going on. Amin Thompson really fulfilling his role as what appears to be the Rockets' new big three. Like, that's kind of been the biggest revelation since the Rockets have been able to put Amin Thompson into their starting lineup. He just fits and complements Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun so beautifully that the Rockets really do have the beginnings of what feels like a very legitimate future big three in Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, and Amin Thompson. Now, this is contingent on Jalen's play being able to be sustainable, right? And again, I'm not asking him to continue scoring 30 a game forever, but just maintain the efficiency, right? Maintain the good decision-making, maintain being that capable lead guard for this Rockets team. And it was also a really good look at this team playing some high-leverage basketball against a Kings team that's been playing out of their mind since firing Mike Brown without Fred VanVleet. And yes, there were some moments. Yes, there were some hiccups late. There were some turnovers, some blown possessions, bad execution down the stretch. But by and large, the Rockets did an incredible job digging themselves out of that hole on the second night of a back-to-back and putting themselves in a position to be able to be competitive and possibly win the game at the end. Like, the fact that Jalen Green had an incredible look at three to tie it up and potentially send this thing to overtime on a night where the Kings absolutely shot the lights out of the basketball. They shot 42.4% from downtown and 90.9% from the free throw line. 20 of 22 there, 14 of 33 from downtown, 50% overall. Give a lot of credit to the Kings, man. Like, they played a hell of a basketball game. And I will say, and I'll close with this, some of the ref BS at the end really sucked, right? Like the fouls that were being whistled on Dillon Brooks, the very ticky-tack touch fouls on what could have been not one, but two different turnovers on De'Aaron Fox to close out that game. And then compounding the issue by awarding an extra free throw to Sacramento because the ball hadn't been inbounded on that second one off the inbounds where DB got the steal before the whistle had been blown. It's frustrating because like those calls could be made literally all game long, right? And at the end of the day, what players want, what coaches want, and what fans want is consistency from the officials. So if you're going to call the game tight, call it tight from the opening tip-off, right? Call it tight from the beginning of the game so that players and coaches and the fans understand what to expect over the course of the game. Don't let a bunch of physicality go away don't let the players play physical and play the way they're going to play for 46, 47 minutes and then change your tone at the very end of a game, because then players don't know what to expect, right? And then that's where frustrations start to boil over and all that stuff. So it was frustrating for those reasons. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, the Rockets lost because of the refs. I hate doing that. I really do. But those were a couple very frustrating calls at the end of the game that did go against the Rockets, unfortunately. But with that, it was a hell of a game. It's unfortunate that they weren't able to pull out the win. But at the same time, this Rockets team, one of the makings of a good team is they haven't let losses stack up, right? It would have been very easy. Again, I said this from the jump. It would have been very easy for this team to have, been deflated after a really emotional, hard-fought game where they didn't come out with the win, to then kind of roll into Portland and expect to take a win against a bad Blazers team and then come out and underestimate them and then get behind the 8 ball and go down double digits and have a young Blazers team with a ton of confidence behind them. They didn't do that, right? They showed up in Portland. They took care of business. The stars did what they did. Role players showed up, DB, Tari, and they walked out of there with a win. And now they're sitting at 28-13 through 41 games. Hell of a record for this Rockets team. An absolutely great place for this organization to be in. Be on the lookout for our next episode, as we're going to do a mid-season report card and kind of revisit and take a look at where this team is at through 41 games, second in the Western Conference with a 1.5 game lead on the Memphis Grizzlies. So be on the lookout for that. I do want your thoughts from this Blazers game. I want your thoughts from the Kings game, since we didn't do an episode for that. Again, I apologize on that, guys. My bad. But with that, remember, the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop the comments while you're there. Subscribe to the daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.